Hello and welcome back. This is More to the Story. I'm your host, Janna Maron. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for listening. In addition to this podcast, I also publish a literary arts magazine called Under the Gumtree, publishing creative nonfiction and visual art. That happens quarterly in digital and print. And if you'd like to have your work considered for publication, you can check us out at underthegumtree.com/submit. And if you're just interested in reading and subscribing and supporting a small independent literary arts magazine, you can check us out at underthegumtree.com. I'm also a book coach and an editor for women writing nonfiction, and you can learn more about me and my business offerings at moretothestory.co. And one of the best ways to get started with me and what I have to offer, especially if you feel like you're in a spot where you're stuck and you don't know what to do, you don't know how to keep going, you don't know how to move forward, but you're not ready to make a big investment or a big commitment, and you aren't sure if working with someone like me would be beneficial or the thing that you need, the best way to check out what I have to do and kind of get a better sense of my vibe is to get my masterclass. It's only $47. It walks you through the framework that I use when I work with my clients. As soon as you purchase, you have immediate access, and you have access to watch and rewatch as often as you want to, and you can get that at moretothestory.co/masterclass. So head on over there to check that out and see. It's all about how to finish your nonfiction book. 3 shifts you need to make to finally write and finish your nonfiction book. So that's the best place to get started with how I function, how I operate, how what I do and my approach might be helpful and beneficial for you. So this, what else do I have before I jump into the show? This episode is brought to you by Cafe Santoro, which is my parents' coffee shop and boutique coffee roastery in Northern California. So if you would love to support a small family-owned business, try some amazing boutique hand-roasted, handcrafted, roasted coffee from a boutique coffee roastery in Northern California, head on over to cafesantoro.com/Janna, Janna. And cafe is spelled with 2 F's, Caffe, because in Italian, Cafe Santoro means coffee the Santoro way. And when you use that link, when it's cafesantoro.com/Janna, that link will automatically apply 10% to your first purchase. So head on over there, check it out, and give us some love. Thank you. Thanks so much. I mean, all writers need coffee, right? So why not? Just give it a try. See if you like it. We do have some subscription options available there too. 2 of the roasts are available for subscription purchase. So here we are. Welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit today about a small and simple way to affect change or affect the outcome that the desired outcome that you're trying to achieve. I say that it's simple, but it's not easy. And this is coming from inspiration that I found in a recent book that I read, and I dedicated an entire email to it that's coming out tomorrow. So if you're not on my email list, get on my email list. You'll get that email tomorrow. Yes, I talk about the same thing in the podcast as I talk about in my email because that it's easy for me to do it that way, and because I know that not everybody reads the email, not everybody listens to the podcast, and when you're listening, it's a little bit of a different take than when it's writing and vice versa. So I recently listened to the celebrity memoir, Be Ready When the Luck Happens by Ina Garten. And I don't read a lot of celebrity memoirs. I mean, I did read Britney Spears' memoir because it was getting a lot of attention, and so many people were talking about how wonderful Michelle Williams' narration of that audiobook was, and that intrigued me, so I listened for that reason. And her narration was amazing, by the way. I read and listened to Matthew Perry's memoir because, I mean, how could you not? He's Matthew Perry, and didn't we all have a crush on him in the 90s when he was on Friends? Which, by the way, I wasn't allowed to watch Friends when I was growing up. So I watched all the episodes, like binge watched all the episodes sometime in my 30s, like late 30s. It was on when I was 38, I came up with a bucket list called 40 Before 40 40 things that I wanted to accomplish before I turned 40. And I'm pretty sure that watching all of Friends was on that list. So that's when I finally watched all of Friends, if you can believe it. I am a very sheltered late bloomer, young, former good Christian girl who is late to the game when it comes to pop culture. But yeah, that's why I read Matthew Perry's memoir or listened to it. And he narrates it, so like you're listening to him talk. It was really lovely. Okay, so getting back to be ready when the luck happens. I am not like, I think that there is a kind of like a subculture in the food world of people who are hardcore Ina Garten fans. I mean, I knew of her. I knew of the Barefoot Contessa. I know that she's written all these cookbooks. But when her memoir came out, I was like, I'm not like a fangirl. I don't need to read it. But then I kept hearing so many people talk about how good it was that, again, I was like, okay, let me check this out. Let me see what this is all about. Well, I listened to the audiobook, and of course, she reads it. And she's just delightful. It was one of the most delightful, lovely reads that I've had in a very long time. Of course, her life is so fun and interesting and different than probably anyone's life I know. But she just has this really wonderful perspective and approach to how she went about pursuing what she wanted to pursue in her life without really having a plan all of the time and without really knowing exactly what the outcome would be, but she's just going to try it and see what happens. And the more I lean into that energy and that vibe in my own work, in my own business, in my writing, in my efforts to get published, the more things start to happen and come a little bit easier to me. And it's really about having this kind of curiosity and playful approach and holding things loosely and lightly and not being too attached to the expectations that I have for how a thing is going to happen, because you just never know how a thing is going to happen. And if you're too attached to those expectations, well, that's what causes disappointment. And we talked last week or the week before, I forget which week it was, about the difference between the gap and the gain. And those expectations are the thing that are going to create that sense of being in the gap constantly. So yeah, you can have expectations and you can have hopes for what you would like to have happen and still hold them kind of loosely and allow room for something surprising to happen, something beyond your wildest dreams or imagination to happen. And that's a result of magic and miracles and the universe at work that you can't even see or control or be a part of. But knowing that that's a potential and that's a possibility, you could end up with this really beautiful life, as did Ina Garten. Her name is pronounced Ina. And one of the things that she does in the book is she talks about her relationship with her husband, which is just lovely. And she even admits toward the end that she knows that there's a lot of like chatter about Ina and Jeffery #relationship goals. And so she shared a lot about her marriage and her relationship that isn't all, wine and roses the way that maybe people perceive it to be, the way they talk about themselves and their relationship in public, because they've done a lot of work. Like, they have what they have because of the work that they have put into their life and into their relationship. And one of the stories that really stuck with me early on was about, it was from the time in Ina's life when she and Jeffery were engaged, and Jeffery was in the military, so they were long distance during their engagement and while trying to plan their wedding. And so a lot of the course, their kind of like details at planning was happening by mail, letters by mail, because this was like back in the 70s, before our modern day of technology communication came along. So I'm just going to read a little excerpt from that story and then talk more about it. So Ina writes, "When he," meaning Jeffery, "heard that my mother was considering one of the local temples as a venue, he balked. The notion of an extravagant wedding is nauseating to me, a huge waste of money, and for what?" he wrote. Then all of a sudden, Jeffrey stopped talking about the wedding, which scared me a little. Did he change his mind about marrying me? I'm a big believer in resolving a problem not by endless discussions, but sometimes just by changing my behavior. Jeffrey was anxious about getting married. Hit the brakes, stop talking about it, and let him get comfortable. It was absolutely the right approach. After I stopped bombarding him with details, he cooled off, had a better perspective. He apologized for being so grumpy, and we worked together to figure it out. We agreed that a smaller wedding at home would be preferable to a big wedding at a temple, and fate handed us a perfect location. And then later on in the book, let me see if I can find it, because I have this long document of excerpts from this book that I did. Yes, if you're curious, how do I have a long document of excerpts from this book if I listen to the audiobook? The answer is I had everything bookmarked, and like I would bookmark these sections in the book and then come back to them and re-listen and yes, type it up. I would transcribe it so that I could retain the excerpts that I wanted to keep for reference after listening to an audiobook. So, okay. So then later on in the book, she was talking about when, this is just a little 2-sentence quote from a story about when she had recently purchased the Barefoot Contessa shop. She was the new owner, and she was, working in the store, and customers would come into the store and treat her like the rest of the staff. And she was feeling a little put off by that and wanted people to recognize her and treat her as the owner of the store and not just the staff. And so all she did was go across the street to the jewelry store, bought herself what she described as the biggest gold necklace she's ever seen, put the necklace on and returned to the store. And immediately people started treating her differently and asking her if she was the owner of the store. And so she writes, I love when changing your behavior, in this case how I dressed, changes everything without your saying a word. It's a lesson that I've used many times in my life. And I think this concept of changing your behavior is something that sure, we are aware of, and we probably know that is something to do in rough or challenging or situations or in conflict or something like that. And in the case of the first example with Ina, she's talking about it specifically in the context of a relationship, and not just any kind of relationship, but an intimate relationship. But then later on, that other example is a type of relationship. It's the relationship between herself and her patrons, like people who patronize her shop, their customers. It's a different kind of relationship, but it's still a relationship, and she was wanting a different type of behavior different type of response from them. So instead of complaining about it, instead of bitching and moaning about it, instead of fretting about it, instead of stressing about it, taking it home, ruminating, causing all of this consternation, she just changes her behavior. She's like, oh, I know what I can do. I can just go get myself a fancy necklace and then signal to everybody that I am the top of the hierarchy in this shop, if you will. And so this idea, although in this context of these examples, we're talking about a marriage and then a business, so relationally and, business minded, doesn't feel like maybe it really applies or makes a lot of sense in the context of my work as a book coach or writing and trying to get published. Well, actually, these two examples of behavior change really stuck with me, I think, because of the straightforwardness and just the sheer simplicity with how it's presented as, here's a problem you want to solve. And instead of creating confrontation, instead of saying we have to sit down and talk about this, we have to work this out, all she does is take charge and control what's within hers to control. Her own response, her own behavior. And this can be applied to so many different things, right? If we think about our own creative work, our own process, our own attempt at getting published, especially in your creative process, how often Do you sit in front of your computer and bang your head against your desk, literally or metaphorically? Maybe you do actually literally bang your head against your desk when you get frustrated. But you're banging your head against your desk and because you're feeling like you're spinning your wheels, you're not making the progress you want to make, but you just sit there, keep doing the same thing over and over. Like if you just tell yourself, I'm going to sit here and reread these words over and over until something clicks or until I figure it out. But it hasn't worked so far, and yet you keep sitting down and doing the same thing. That's the literal definition of insanity, right? Insanity is continuing to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. And I'm 100% guilty of this because I have the type of personality that is like always charging forward. And that's how I get results, but that's not how everyone else gets results. So I can have a tendency to be a little kind of like blinders up and think, let's just keep charging forward when actually that may not be the thing that works for everyone. And if I just kind of like what Ina's talking about in the example with Jeffery, like maybe if I just kind of cooled my jets and backed off and just like changed my approach, how would that affect and change the approach of whoever else I'm trying to interact with? How would changing my approach with taking a break from my work, for example, letting it sit and going away and doing something else and revisiting it after a week or 2 weeks or even a month or a year, if you've been sending your manuscript out, querying, for example, for a year and you're getting little nibbles but no bites, well, stop. It's time to stop doing the same thing over and over and change your behavior, change your approach, do something differently if you want a different result. And yes, of course, in the context of my work, that means maybe looking into working with someone like me, but it doesn't always have to be. It can just be listening to a podcast like this, doing your own self-awareness, self-evaluation to think, oh, what is the thing that I could change? It doesn't even have to be a big change. It could be just a tiny little tweak that like, instead of ruminating over that one troublesome section in the manuscript, you're going to work backwards from the end to the beginning instead of from the beginning to the end, and just see how that shifts the way that you are looking at your work, because suddenly you aren't just like giving your brain what it already knows and expects as you go through the document. You got to shake it up. You got to give your brain something unexpected so that it can see something unexpected. So how can changing your behavior affect the desired outcome? It's a very simple thing that you can do to affect change, but it is not easy. So the first thing you have to do is have self-awareness. You have to pay attention and have self-awareness. And then once you have that self-awareness, you got to do something with it. You actually have to make change. You actually have to change your behavior. Like, knowledge is nothing unless you do something with it, right? But knowledge, of course, is the first step. So highly recommend Ina Garten's memoir, especially the audiobook. There's lots of other little gems in there. That was the biggest takeaway for me by far. And I mean, her life has just been so interesting. If you're a fangirl, maybe you've already listened. If you've already listened, drop a comment. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. You can follow me on Instagram at Janna Released. You can follow Under the Gumtree on Instagram at under Gumtree. Don't forget to check out my masterclass, moretothestory.co/masterclass, how to write and finish your nonfiction book. Don't forget to check out cafesantoro.com/Janna for 10% off your first purchase of whole bean coffee from a boutique Northern California coffee roastery. Best decaf I've ever had, by the way. Oh, let me tell you one more thing about this coffee. A friend of mine had an event a couple weekends ago, and she was stressing out a little bit about the beverages and the food situation and catering and whatnot, and she didn't know what to do about the coffee. It was a late morning, early afternoon event. She wanted to have coffee, and she was going to try to buy it from somewhere. And I just said, well, it's not a huge event. It was for 30 people. You could just make coffee at your house. You could just make it. You don't have to go buy it somewhere special. And she was like, wait, what? Are you sure? And she was kind of freaking out about it. And I said, okay, you know what? It's fine. I'll do it. I'll make the coffee. So, of course, I used Cafe Santoro coffee and had some decaf, had some regular. And would you believe that decaf was the hit? It was the talk of the event. Everybody was raving about that decaf. Like, this can't be decaf. This is too good to be decaf. So it's not just me. So if you're looking for a way to maybe ease up on the caffeine and still have some great flavor for your morning coffee, check out the Cafe Santoro decaf. Maybe I should do an extra special discount for the decaf only, since that's my roast. I'll think about it. Anyway, in the meantime, check out all those links. Check out moretothestorypodcast.com. moretothestorypodcast.substack.com for the show notes to this episode, where you can also subscribe to my Substack. That's going to be changing and getting a little bit of some updates very soon, working on some stuff behind the scene to do more with the Substack space for Janna and Marlise for More to the Story. And follow me there. And the last thing is that the theme song is written and performed by Jeremy Maron. And if you're into the wine life, you can follow him on Instagram at Existential Wine Guy. He's also on Substack, so you can follow him there too. I'm pretty sure it's Existential Wine Guy on Substack as well. So thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. I'll talk to you soon again on the next episode of More to the Story.